In the name of the God who loves us all. Amen. In today's gospel, we've got two very different groups of people coming together to try and trick Jesus into committing to a political stance. On the one hand, you've got the Pharisees. Oh, the Pharisees. I think the Gospels would have been much shorter books of the Bible if the Pharisees could have just behaved for like 5 minutes. The Pharisees were Jewish scholars who were in a position of power. They were primarily concerned with upholding the law, something we all know that Jesus came to abolish. So they were constantly trying to trip Jesus up, and today's gospel is no exception. Here, they're asking if Jews should pay taxes. They're hoping that he'll say yes, because they believe that will imply that Jesus is creating an idol of Caesar, of the state, and therefore can be written off by the Jewish people. But they were especially tricky this time because they recruited a very unlikely ally in this questioning, the Herodians. These people were more of a political party than a religious group, and that's exactly why the Pharisees brought them into this argument. The Herodians were supporters of a political dynasty ruled by the Herods, who were under the control of Rome. The Herod family ruled in Palestine in Jesus' day. Think of it as a kind of a modern-day analogy being our Georgia state government, which is a part of the United States government. In today's situation, the Herodians are hoping for the opposite answer than the Pharisees. They're hoping that Jesus will say no, Jews shouldn't pay taxes because it would imply that Caesar is more important than God. If Jesus answers in this way, then the Herodians are ready to arrest him for sedition. You can't be a citizen and not pay your taxes, right? We'll leave the conversation of taxes for another time, like today. I talked about it a little earlier during the Rector's Forum. What we're really looking at in today's gospel is a choice that these people are trying to force Jesus to make. They've taken the issue and, by the way that they've asked it and the people that they've brought around him, they're trying to force Jesus to make a political statement. They're attempting to trap him into black and white thinking. Are you for the empire or against it? And we see this all the time in our own lives, right? This assumption that because you are for one thing, then you are against something else. Or because you support a certain issue, you're automatically a certain kind of person. If you like, nerdy things like Star Wars, then you must not have any social life. Or if you played sports in high school, then you must not have been very smart. Do you want to work hard at your job? Or do you think that you should have some work-life balance? You can't have both. Are you for taking care of your kids? Or are you for having a meaningful career? If you're for a certain political issue, then you must be for this other one that we assume always goes together. Are you for Israel or Palestine? Can't be both. It's all a false polarity. And that's why Jesus doesn't answer the question in today's gospel. It's not black and white thinking. The Jewish people were called to a dual loyalty: follow the commands of God and meet the obligations of their government. You can do both, and as long as they aren't directly in contradiction, you should do both. You can pay your taxes and still hold God above Caesar. You can be nerdy and popular. You can work really hard at your job and expect for your time off to be honored. Nuance and context are so important. Jesus' response is that they should give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. And there's actually a direct connection to this answer and our own purpose. Because we have heard time and again, we are God's. We are all God's people, and we are called to give our lives to God. And that doesn't look like how we pay our taxes. That looks like how we live into Christ's command for our lives. If we give ourselves to God because we belong to God, then our actions and words will all point in one direction. We'll center our lives around loving God and loving our neighbor as ourselves. When we really think of how we can live into Christ's command to love each other, one of the first things that we must do is get to know one another and listen to each other so that we can appreciate each other's experiences and circumstances, just like Jesus did when he was traveling with the disciples. It's when we get close to each other, when we acknowledge the power in proximity, that we can truly start to love one another. And one of the most important ways that we do this in the church is through our service with those experiencing poverty and oppression. As Brian Stevenson says, we have to get proximate in order to understand how to help those who live in the margins. We must find ways to engage and invest and position ourselves in the places where there is despair. By spending time with people whose life experiences are different from our own, we not only gain empathy for their struggles, but we learn to see their strengths and the gifts that they bring to the table. We can learn how to best help communities in need rather than assuming that we already know what's best. And through our experiences of getting proximate, of getting to know each other, of loving each other, our faith grows infinitely more than it would through any action that we might attempt on our own. At the Episcopal Community Foundation for Middle and North Georgia, we fund ministries which seek to get proximate with their local communities. We work with the parishes in our diocese to identify how we can come together and give people the opportunity that they need to move into a place of self-sufficiency and sustainability. Just the way that Jesus did this when he was traveling with the disciples, we get to know people truly through that proximity. And ECF's role is to provide grant funding to our parishes and their nonprofit partners, which increase capacity for this kind of ministry. As you know, your community here at St. David's is engaging in this kind of work. We have been honored to partner with y'all several times in recent years to create a deeper impact in the communities that you serve. Recently, ECF committed a grant of $25,000 towards the renovations of the house next door that y'all are using in partnership with Family Promise. It is through programs like this that the members of St. David's can engage in relationship building through service with those experiencing poverty. Both the program participants and the volunteers from here at the church are able to experience spiritual growth through the proximity of this service. The work that y'all are doing is a prime example of how ECF's funding, which comes from parishioners like you from across the entire Diocese of Atlanta, can be utilized for definitive action in our outreach ministries. The ministry of presence, of proximity, is how we are able to learn from each other and love each other, how we can be a part of real transformation in our communities. And through ECF's partnership with our parishes, we're funding opportunities for this kind of proximity across the diocese. Unlike other ministries in our diocese, ECF's work is not supported by each parish's tithe to the diocese. Instead, the funds that ECF distributes through our grant-making programs have been contributed by Episcopalians like you over the last 40 years, primarily through legacy giving. During the Rector's Forum, I had the chance to share a bit about how each of you can ensure that St. David's and ECF can continue this work through legacy giving, with opportunities like including the church in your will or making contributions from your IRA. I'd love to meet with each of you about the legacy that you would like to leave for your church. Just come and see me after the service and we can arrange a time to meet. Providing the long-term financial sustainability for this outreach work is a part of our role as the church. We're so grateful for the generations of Episcopalians who have laid the foundation for us to engage in outreach and to love each other as Christ loves us. It's now our turn to roll up our sleeves and get proximate, both through our own direct service with those in need and through ensuring that there will be the financial support for this work to continue in the future. When you think about the people who are in your life and the ministries that you're a part of, the community that you live in, how might you be called to get proximate and love others? How are you being called to let go of black and white thinking and find the nuance? How are you being called to be in community today? Amen.